Let's Talk JMMA with Charlie Jewett from sogo-kaku.com. This is a podcast about the deep end of Japanese combat sports scene. I'm your host, Shu Hirata from On the Road Management. Now, let's begin. Hey, good evening.
Hey, good morning, Shu. How's everything going in New York?
Good. So I guess we are changing our podcast time to a nighttime Japan time, right?
Yes.
And the US in the morning Monday from this episode. So Let's dive into the first subject, which is the match 2022, Tenshin versus Takeru. Now, did you go to the venue or you bought a pay-per-view?
I bought a pay-per-view.
Okay. And how was it? I mean, how much was it? Let's talk about that. Like, I guess
I think it was 4,000 yen.
Yeah, so it's like $32, $33.
Yes.
There. Yeah.
And I watch a lot of Abima. I watch Rise on Abima. I watch K1 on Abima. I watch One Championship on Abima. So I've seen a lot of stuff. And the one that stuck out to me was the production of it. The value of the match was off the chains. It was a very high production value.
Really?
And I was watching it with my wife and her friends, and they just kept saying this should be on TV.
On like a national TV, right?
Right. The production value of it, I mean, it's insane to me that it wasn't on TV. It was really, really good. Like, the hype built up for the fight paid off completely. They made it seem like a special event.
Yeah.
And I was kind of funny because certain fighters were like, yeah, we got to have the match 2 next year. And it was kind of it made me laugh because I was just like, there's no way you can replicate this. This is like a once in a lifetime kind of occurrence.
Right. It's almost like a Colosseum 2000 when Rickson Gracie fought Funaki.
Right.
But it was probably much bigger than that in that sense, right?
Right. They're saying like we got to have the match 2, and I was just like, well, who's going to be the match 2? You need to make some famous kickboxers fast if that's your goal. But no, it was awesome. It was a great event. Production value was really, really good. The energy in the Tokyo Dome looked nuts. It was completely packed.
Yeah, and I heard there's a bunch of celebrities, right? I'm pretty sure your wives and her friends were excited.
They weren't just excited. They were taking pictures of the screen when they would show the celebrities. So what it turns out, there's where the commentators are, there was seats right behind them. And those were seats that were not for sale. Those were seats that Sakakibara reserved for famous people so that they would be on the screen whenever the commentators were talking.
Sure, right.
And we're talking musicians, actors, famous models, Olympic athletes, soccer players. These were like ridiculously famous people. Like, there's this Laura girl, I think it's Rora, is that her name? Laura? And she is like all over the train. She's this famous model. So it's just like incredibly famous Japanese people sitting there, very visible for the entire event.
That's like same style as what the K1 used to be, right? Like Mr. Kancho Ishii used to do the K1, and that's when he used to like line up all the celebrity on the first row of the seats, right? So
it was definitely a callback to that because they also rotate them. They would have like different celebrities kind of there. Like Mikuru was there. Peter Arts was sitting kind of off to the side. So a lot of legends, a lot of famous people.
Yeah, that's very, very common. Actually, a lot of people don't notice that. They do that in the RIZIN too. Every time I have to try to get some VIP seats, they always say, okay, I can get this one for this fight, but not that fight because it's for the TV purposes,
But, they also built up the anticipation for it because they wrote the names of the celebrities on the chairs. So if they hadn't arrived yet, my wife and her friends were all looking like, what? That person's going to be here? So they were all like, really excited to see what famous people were showing up.
Right. There's a couple of things I found that's very interesting was that there's one comedian, very famous comedian named Mr. Ariyoshi made a comment that he got invited to that match 2022, but he has decided to not go there. And he made a fun about it by saying, he's like, well, if I were a viewer, if it cut to myself on the screen when they're watching fights, what the fuck, hell is my, comedians doing there? So I didn't want to ruin that atmosphere. So I would decide to not go.
Yeah.
But that's
kind of funny.
Yeah.
To your point, it was kind of funny because like some of them were just like trying to like not pay attention to the cameras that were being shoved in their face.
Right.
Or some of them would like, isn't there like a famous UFC clip of the camera just staying in Gomi's face and Gomi just like complaining about it? So it's kind
Right,
of
right.
like that, but
So yeah, exactly. So, but I think Ariyoshi's comment is partly because of the fact that I think he's just kind of be on the side of a terrestrial broadcasting, since
mhm.
it's not broadcasted. So he's kind of taking a stance that he has decided to not
Yeah,
go, kind of stuff.
but I would just reiterate the people that were there were so much more incredibly famous
Hmm.
than people that are at like rising shows.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
It was like a who's who of like, if I recognize these people, that must mean they're very big because I don't pay that much attention to a lot of Japanese pop culture,
Right,
like
right, right.
modern pop culture. I'm like, oh, I've recognized all of these people.
Yeah, exactly. The movie stars. I even saw the
Yeah.
what's his name, Masaki Suda, giving out the flowers to either I
Yes.
forgot Takeru attention before the fight, and this kid's very famous, top actors in Japan.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess, and also, I want to point out something. I wanted to discuss about this that since I mentioned K1, Mr. Master Ishii, who used to handle K1
Mhm.
shows, he tweeted something very interesting.
Yeah, he tweeted the
He
results of kind of like the financials, right?
Exactly. He said it's a predictions. Pay per
Mhm.
view were sold almost 500,000. The
Yeah.
ticket was
So
sold, almost 18, $17 million. Blah blah blah. But there's one point I have to point it out here is this. He said the sponsor fee is like 3.7 million US dollars for a big show like that on Tokyo Dome. The sponsor fee is a little over $3 million. That's really bad, actually. Don't you think so?
well, I would say the sponsor was kind of weird because
Mm-hmm.
it seemed incredibly last minute. It
Oh yeah.
seemed almost like Yogibo did them a favor by stepping up last minute to do it. And I noticed the other big sponsor was like that Shonan Beauty Clinic that's also a rising sponsor.
RIZIN's yearly sponsor, the headline
So
sponsor.
part of me thinks that they just had to have gotten like a good deal because they were desperate to get sponsors in the wake of losing the Fuji TV deal.
Exactly, that's my point. That because of the fact they lost the Fuji TV, they really couldn't get any big name new national sponsors. Like
Hmm.
in American sense, like a Nike or like anybody that big or Sony or anything. That could have happened. But I hate to tell you this, but I don't mean to ruin this excitement for the Japanese fans. But this sponsor fee, three point
Yeah,
seven million dollars, that's super low, and that's
right.
actually tells I'm a little bit concerned about the future now.
Well, see, we have a comment from Jamie saying that apparently Suzuki was supposed to be a sponsor. I think he
Mhm.
means when it was going to be on Fuji TV. So that would have been a different level sponsor right there.
Exactly, the automobile company Suzuki, right? The
Right.
bicycles, right? I mean, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. That's a different level of sponsorship. It's like in America comparison to like a Super Bowl sponsorship. You know,
Right.
I
Well,
mean,
I mean, just look at the individual sponsors.
mhm.
Takeru was sponsored by Rakuten. Can you imagine if Rakuten had sponsored the event? That would have been a completely different level of sponsorship.
Right. But you and I know that some of the license fee paid by the streaming companies to the sponsorship money paid, it's not that high as a lot of fans are
Mhm.
thinking. So, but in a sense, so they have the big sponsor Yogibo, they have a side games,
Yes.
and I know exactly how much they pay to Tenshin himself. So considering that for event sponsorship, like headlining sponsors or like it's very very low. So
Right.
yeah, I mean,
What do you think it would have been if it had been on Fuji TV?
oh, way bigger. I mean, it's almost like in a comparison to like how much NFLs are getting from these
Right.
broadcasting deals compared to how much ESPN is paying. You know,
I have a
the
question based off this
UFC.
tweet. So, based off his tweet,
Hmm.
it made like what 20 million in pay per view. What do you think the split between Abima and the promoters is?
You know what? Don't ask me. I signed
No, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Okay,
NDA, so I can't talk about that. But in traditionally, it's half half, right?
right,
Traditionally,
exactly.
but hey, times are changing, so who knows?
So if it's half, but if it is half and half, this is still a pretty good payday for everyone involved.
Oh yeah, it is a good payday. Don't get me wrong. And
Mm,
plus, Kancho Ishii actually also pointed out the fact that 500,000 buys on pay per view, like Japan is like 1/3 of US in terms of popularity. So that
mhm.
could be roughly translated to 1.5 million pay per views buys
Right.
in the
And
US. So that's almost close to one of the highest pay per views sold in UFC. Is what
plus
Mr.
the
Kancho
gate
has pointed out.
fee,
Yeah.
the gate fee was ridiculous. It was like 25 million.
Right. That's
So I
because
mean,
the ringside use like $25,000.
yeah,
So
it was a smart move actually because behind the row of like the famous celebrities that got free tickets
hmm
were also a bunch of famous people,
hmm
and you got the impression that they just wanted to be seen at this event.
Oh yeah, of course.
So there's like a bunch of YouTubers and influencers all in that front area that they just gobbled up those $30,000
You know
tickets.
what's so funny? Like I'll tell you this: like Japanese shows, like especially the fight shows, traditionally has a very high price ticket compared to
Mhm.
like other major sports. And part of it is because if you put prices like $30,000 on your ticket, if you give that ticket to your friend as like a VIP, that's like a big treatment. So
Right.
like when usually promoter comes up with this big price seats, they don't really expect to sell everything. Half maybe sell, but half they're gonna give away as a comp tickets to a very special VIP.
Well, it reminds me, what is it like? They kind of compete to see who spends the most money on a tuna at an auction every year,
Exactly. It's
just to
almost
say
like
that
that.
you spent the most money on a tuna.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Japanese or anybody, right, in the world. They
Right.
like to brag about how much money you're making and stuff like that because, even Mikuru tweets something like, oh, I pay what, like $12,000 per rent and blah, 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 kind of stuff like that, right? But, like I live in a city like New York. And so, like when you start bragging about how rich you are and stuff like that, there's no way I can win against
Yeah.
like this big billionaires out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's anyway. So again, it's almost kind of same theory that yeah, I hate to compare this to UFC or even like a Pacquiao or Mayweather pay per view where they sold 4.6 million kind of stuff. But again, I think this was a big event for the Japanese
This-
sports combat sports scene, and I think it's something to be excited about.
yeah. I
But
mean,
I'm telling you, this 3.7 million sponsor fee is super low, and the fact that it wasn't not broadcast or streamed anywhere outside Japan, which is just really sad. I think
yeah. Oh
That,
yeah.
why do you think
I know
this
a bunch
this
of
was
people
not
had to
streamed?
use.
Yeah,
I know a bunch of people had to use VPNs to watch it, but
right,
it's still annoying to have to go through that whole process.
right. I mean, again, VPN is not that expensive. It's like $12 a month, and the most expensive one.
Yeah.
So I watched the whole show too.
Mhm.
But again, I wish they streamed outside Japan. Now,
Right.
why this didn't happen? What was the word on the Japan side?
There's several rumors going around because nothing direct's being said.
Uh,
Because, correct me if I'm wrong, Abima has the ability. Some of my friends that are not in Japan, what they find annoying about Abima is like half the content is geo blocked and half the
mhm,
content isn't geo blocked. It's just
mhm.
kind of random whether or not they're going to geo block something.
Right, right, right.
And this was geo blocked. One of the rumors I heard was that it might be because K1 doesn't have the ability to license the name outside of the Japanese market.
Yeah, exactly. Like those folks who handles K1 in Japan, they only has the right to use that K1 entity only in Japan. So they
Right.
basically signs deals like every 5, 6, whatever the years. The person who owns the rights are the man named Mr. Mike Kim who lives in Korea. So yeah,
Yeah.
that probably it's part of the reason. Yeah, but again, why not sell it, right? Even though you get like maybe little $10,000 from 30 different countries, that's $300,000,
Right. Well, I
right?
think also, I think the Fuji. Tell me what you think about this. I think they knew more about the Fuji TVD. I'm sorry. They knew more about the Fuji TV deal falling through, and I think they knew about it quicker than it got released to the media. And
Probably,
I
yeah.
think Sakakibara and them were scrambling to try to get the domestic situation figured out.
hmm
And trying to figure out the domestic situation, they just completely ignored the international situation.
That is a possibility because you'd be surprised. It's not like he has a gang of like 300-400 staffs like
Yeah.
UFC have. He's running this show with probably like I would say maybe 10 full time.
The rising office is incredibly small.
Exactly, right. So maybe
Yeah.
with 10 full time at most, right? So plus all these independent contractors. So yeah, that's a possibility. But again, to me, that's a poor excuse if that's the reason.
No.
Because When you're making only a little over $3 million on sponsorship money, if you can score another 300,000 on license deals outside the Japan, then that's a good opportunity because that might pull in new sponsors and stuff. Who knows, right?
Well, I think no matter what happened, it's a poor excuse because they announced this match so long ago.
Exactly, right.
This stuff should have all been resolved 6 months ago.
Exactly. For foreign broadcaster or streaming company, it really doesn't matter if it was aired in Fuji or not. That shouldn't care, right? That shouldn't be the issue. So
exactly. I mean,
let's do that.
To be honest, I mean, it just kind of reeks of like the sad reality of the Japanese combat sports scene is that a lot of stuff seems to be done incredibly last minute. Like I remember
always
during the Dream days. I mean, they were selling tickets for shows where they didn't even announce the fights.
Right.
It's like, just trust us; it'll be good.
I mean, I remember when I talked to who was that guy? I forgot that one of those millionaires who was looking to buy Pride back then. Anyway, but he was telling me that when they were doing the show in Pride shows in Vegas, they pushed Pride to come up with a food cart 2 months before the show so they can print out the posters and do proper marketing and PR. But the attitude the Pride side had was, don't worry. You announce the card 2 weeks before the show, it's sell out. It happened in Japan back then, but it wasn't like that in the States, you know? So maybe that trend or that thinking still kind of exists in the particular Japanese MMA scene, you know?
Oh, it's completely true with RIZIN. I mean, RIZIN, if you compare UFC cards to RIZIN cards are having like final adjustments made sometimes like 2 weeks before the event starts.
Right, because we'll get to that later because we have 2 RIZIN shows in July and the later one, RIZIN in 38 days, still haven't announced any card yet, right? So,
but back to the match, the atmosphere looked incredible in the Tokyo Dome.
Oh, I bet.
And it made me sad that I wasn't there because
you
this is really like one of those once in a I'm not gonna say once in a lifetime, but it's like once in a generation of fighters kind of situation.
It is, because this is not going to happen for the kickboxing world for a long, long time.
That's what I hate to be cynical, but they were all like, "Oh, next year we got to do the match too," and I'm like, "That's impossible. It's not going to happen."
2023, it would have to be something to do with MMA fighters.
Yeah, I'm like, it would have to be Mikuru Asakura versus like something crazy,
or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, let's see how he does against Mayweather, which we will talk about it later. But but again, we get some comments here that it was amazing to see this level of competition. I mean, level of the show again in Japan. It reminded me of Yoyogi Stadium show in 2022, right?
Well, it was awesome because it did feel like an old school K1 show just happened.
I know.
In 2022.
Exactly. I mean, I miss those days. It's too bad it's not happening anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Now, what else about the match 2022 do you would like to mention here? Because there are other matches on that show too.
Oh yeah. I would say, well, let's talk about this. I feel like Rise came out the winner.
Really?
If it was a Rise K1 showdown, I feel like Rise won all the important fights.
Important fight, right? Okay.
For the future and like they can boast that they have the better fighters, because like in the champion versus champion matches and the hot prospect versus hot prospect matches, Rise seemed to really take all of those ones.
Yeah, that's actually true.
I mean, there were some, Taiju losing was kind of an upset, but Taiju's kind of been on a downward spiral, it seems like, ever since his Taiga fights in RIZIN. And shoot boxing went 2-0, which is kind of nuts. Kaito winning was insane because everyone kept telling me how strong his opponent was. And Kaito winning was big. The Nakamura fight was the only open finger glove fight on the entire card, and that was kind of a nice, short, chaotic little instance. But
right,
yeah, like the Suzuki winning was big for Rise. I feel like when he beat Kaneko. Yeah,
I mean, I know. I mean, it's almost like even results, but yeah, you're right in that sense, And Takeru lost, and obviously, I hate to tell this, and it's all about making this fight happen. I guess,
Yeah.
instead of results or how fight was. But come on, face it, that Tenshin dominated that fight.
Well, I felt kind of bad because I kind of was pulling for Takuet a little bit, and yeah, it kind of felt weird to me because Tenshin leaving this to go to boxing. My initial thought was, is his boxing career ever going to be exciting as this match was?
I don't think so. Boxing is going to be tough. But again, you got to understand, boxing has about 135 champions among those three associations. And the issues in terms of America, the license issue to boxing fighters are much less than MMA fighters now. So it's the doors are wide open to make stars and champions.
I was just speaking in terms of
people will kill me for saying this, but
I was just speaking in terms of him fighting in front of 60,000 people, where everybody's just going nuts for him.
Well, it takes two to tango, right? And this time he had Takeru. So it's all about how he's going to do in boxing and also how they're going to create his rival. Like what they did for Murata. It may take like a decade, right?
Well, that's what I was kind of saying about the Mayweather. I mean, not Mayweather if Mikuru Asakura, he would need someone to tango with.
Exactly.
We can get into this later. Mayweather's not the guy, but
no.
He would need someone to tango with to make it equally as exciting.
Right, because Mayweather, after all, is an exhibition. They need some real fight. All the fans must wonder who is going to win. Well, the result has to be the big deal, right?
I hate to be super cynical, but Mayweather's not also that big of a deal in Japan.
Exactly. So. That's why people don't realize that. But here's what it is. It's almost like Japanese fans are very, very cruel when it comes to fight sports.
Yeah.
This was a huge thing because, like you mentioned, all the K1 fighters lost on the important fights, and the leader, the Takeru, the boss, lost. I mean, if K1 falls apart and go out of business, that's the kind of effect the Japanese fans are imagining. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to have that kind of magnitude, and again, it takes two to tango. So he's got to find somebody who has that kind of magnitude if they're going to make 2023 happens with Mikuru.
Well, yeah. Plus, I mean. What Takeru was fighting for like close to 15 years, 40-1.
I know.
Tenshin has become a superstar.
Right.
You can't build these guys up overnight. You need these guys to
be
dominant champions for a while.
Right? Exactly. I mean, Tenshin was nobody. I wouldn't say nobody, but it wasn't this big when he started fighting for RIZIN. So RIZIN made him big, right? Made him do the big fights, Mayweather fights,
And it wasn't just RIZIN; it was RIZIN having their events on Fuji TV.
Exactly.
That made Tenshin a big star. We got an interesting comment. What do you think the fallout will be from having a show like this? Will it give Japan combat sports new momentum? I'd say no, because I think this is like a one-off event.
Yeah.
It was a very big kickboxing event.
Right.
But it wasn't
on the Fuji television. It really hurted them. I mean, general public really doesn't know. They didn't know much.
Plus, this wasn't. I mean, it was called the match for a reason. This was literally Takeru versus Tenshin.
Right.
I think half the people watching it probably didn't know what Rise was, and they didn't know that K1 still existed. They just knew that Takeru was fighting Tenshin.
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I think I told you, my sister-in-law and her husband and kids lives in Tokyo. They're American, and they live in so-called American society and half Japanese society. And they send their kids to TK Kosaka to wrestling school. Yet both didn't know this match 2022 was happening. So I asked him, "Oh, you don't see advertisement?" He's like, "Oh, I really don't see it. Is there any posters or any TV ad kind of stuff?" So was it a lot of PR marketing going on?
I think it was a very focused marketing. I think if you watch MMA or kickboxing on YouTube, you got YouTube ads, and Abima was doing what they could. And there were some posters and some stations, but it all seemed very last minute, like a very focused, kind of like how they do with boxing now, where it's just like a couple of days before the fights where they only do the marketing. But I was kind of upset. It was disappointing because when you saw how exciting it was in the venue, all that I could think was like, this should be how it is throughout the whole country. And unfortunately, because it's not on Fuji TV.
That's why I wish this was on Fuji television. So the grandma on like a remote part of the country would be watching that, That's what they need, because Japan's full of elderly people.
Yeah,
exactly. A lot of areas out there the cable is not reaching, or they just don't watch internet.
Especially also since Tenshin and Takeru are both likely not long for the sport of kickboxing.
No,
I feel
not at
like
all.
this event was more of a flash in the pan.
Right.
And there might be another big event 5 or 10 years down the road, but
Mm.
it's not going to be happening this year or next year.
Jamie said, first thoughts after the show, Rise KY need to merge.
That's a good idea, but I also think part of what made this show as exciting was that Rise and K1 fighters don't fight each other.
Right.
And so there was a lot of question of like who's going to win. It reminds me like when all the Pride fighters came into the UFC at first.
Yep. Well, you know what? Then let's talk about this one because I think that's going to be related to the issue. Is this rising fight pass? Do you think they're going to sign up all these Japanese promotions to be on this rising fight pass, like Pancras, Shuto, or even K1? The point is because if the Rising wants K1, they don't really need to merge. They just have to wait till their licensing deal with Mr. Mike Kim is over and walk in there and offer better money.
First off, I'd like to say I think they must have spent a lot of time thinking up the name. Because
I was just thinking, why do they have to use the word fight pass? Do they have to? I mean, I don't understand this marketing tactic.
Yeah,
is this like a common word for fight channel and fight streaming now? I don't think so.
Not in Japan, and not at all.
Not in the States, too. I don't think so, is it?
Plus, it's kind of misleading in a sense.
It
the
is.
UFC Fight Pass has the UFC, but most diehard fans get it for the other non-UFC related content.
Exactly.
And when they say Rising Fight Pass, it makes you think, oh, is there going to be non-Rising stuff on this? And there's no way in hell Shuto would go on it, is my first thought.
Yeah. Pancras depends on the money. And maybe deep Jules, yes, right? But who else?
But they're not going to get them for if subscribers are paying 800 yen a month. How many subscribers do you think they're going to get?
I'm not sure.
This sounds like a thing where they're hoping that people, because you have to watch the pay-per-views now through Fight Pass, and they're hoping people sign up for Fight Pass to get the pay-per-view and then forget to unsubscribe to the membership, and they'll just get some money that way, I think is what they're hoping. Also, when they had that guy, that was like the weirdest press conference. I felt like it was at a small room in Vegas with 4 local reporters who had come to talk to Mayweather and did not care about Rising, Mikuru, or Rising Fight Pass. I think one of them asked one of them asked Mayweather what he thought about an NBA team in Las Vegas. Like those were the types of questions that were being asked at this press conference.
Really? I mean, okay, well, let's talk about that. I mean, so yeah, I thought it was really funny too because they were in Vegas during this, right? Yeah. I mean, and I saw Shingo try to speak like almost like a ring announcer, introducing those two, and Mayweather spoke for like an hour.
I don't think a single reporter asked Mikuru a question. I don't think they knew who he was.
Exactly.
They asked Mayweather what he thought about another boxer, what he thought about the number of champions in boxing, what he thought about bringing an NBA team to Las Vegas. So none of the questions were about this. It seemed like kind of a weird press conference. And then after he left, they had like the guys that are doing the Rising Fight Pass come up.
Yeah, I saw that. Right.
And that also seemed weird to me because they were incredibly vague. And the guy just kept repeating the fact that he's helped make viewing services for like concerts and entertainers before. So, but it just seemed very it seemed like a way of battling the bad news of the Fuji TV deal was to like come up and be like, we have this new thing. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it. But it all just seemed,
of course it is. And also
unfinished.
At the same time, he's probably like Mr. Sakakibara was hoping Mr. Fuji new president will change his mind and he realizes this content can make money. So let's go back to the table to negotiate, right? Or maybe it appeal to the other terrestrial broadcasting to say that, hey, you guys want to buy this content,
My general thought, though, is that now that Fuji TV has turned down the content, no other local broadcaster is going to pick it up.
No other terrestrial broadcaster will pick it up? Yeah, it's really funny. Japan is like that. When everybody looks at right, you go look at the right. And it's different from America. In America, somebody will pick it up. You know what I mean? Somebody will raise their hands and, oh, I'll do it, because we make money. But yeah, you're right. And of course, all those so-called local televisions all tied to the national terrestrial broadcasting station. So it's just
if this was about the money, they would have done it, because they replaced it with some shitty show where non-famous comedians reacted to, like, it was like they essentially replaced it with America's Funniest Videos, like people doing reaction videos to foreigners and dogs. So,
well, I mean, new president of Fuji used to be a guy who used to do the variety shows, so he's coming from the comedy background, and word is he hates MMA. Yeah. So him and his crew, like, guys on his board, basically pushed him out.
Yeah.
Just like, it's almost, it's actually very similar to what happened to WCW.
Really?
They had the numbers, they were the biggest shows on TNT and TBS. But when AOL and Time Warner merged and decided to make that two station into more family-oriented station, regardless of the number they had, they didn't care. They just, sold to WWE for very, very cheap price, and they demolished it.
What sounds like WCW might get the last laugh. It sounds like Vince might be taking a step away.
Yeah, exactly. So
he's got his own problems.
Right. So the point is, I mean, it's not about the money for Fuji. They just don't like him, I guess, right?
That's interesting. There's a comment that RIZIN changed the name. It was Fight Pass, but now it's something different.
Oh, it's not something different?
That's kind of funny, because, I mean, they literally have the poster saying RIZIN Fight Pass all over the background.
No, it's something different. That's great. I hope they come up with something.
Well, he says it's RIZIN Stream Pass, which is an even stupider name.
That's dumb.
That's so stupid.
I mean, they should hire some marketing company in America to do little things like that. I know it's not cheap, but in the long run, actually, it works, I think.
Well, if you're obsessed with using English words for it, you should put English words together that make sense.
No, I mean, let me ask you this. The word RIZIN, most of the people pronounce it as RIZIN outside Japan. Now, when you say RIZIN, do you imagine a word rising sun?
No, I don't.
Okay, I think that's what the Japanese people are thinking.
Oh.
Nobody even talk about that, but Japan, rising sun, rising, you know what I mean?
That makes sense, because I'm looking at it right now and it has the sun in the middle of the
exactly,
Z. But
right. So,
I always thought it kind of represented, like, the MMA scene, like, re-emerging, like,
oh, right, exactly. Okay,
coming back.
That's probably that too, but also a rising sun, rising. Like, everything's all into it.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone else thinks of that.
Exactly. So that's my point. So I think it's might worth it to hire some, like, a PR agent, or a marketing company or expert or consultant or whatever to do a little bit work on the English side.
I mean, if it's true that they've already changed the name a week after they released it, that just goes to prove my point that this isn't finished. The guy was speaking incredibly vague, and it doesn't sound like they have any details about how it's actually going to be run.
I mean, all right, so let's go back to this Mayweather Mikuru. I think a few days after that, Mayweather revealed that he got paid to be on this press conference, right?
That's another thing I wanted to say, was that if they were translating what Mayweather was saying in Japanese, it makes RIZIN look incredibly stupid. He said,
it does, I know.
He said something like, they asked him about the fight, maybe, and he said he'll make it as good of a fight depending on how much they pay him. If they don't pay him a lot, he'll finish him quickly. And if they pay him a lot, he'll make Mikuru look good, is kind of essentially what he said.
You know, that's too bad, because in a way, like, I think Mikuru and Sakakiba was on the press conference, and Mikuru said he wanted to do more rounds, and Sakakiba said, well, that would cost me a lot of money, or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the more money you pay, you get more rounds. If he wants to do MMA, it'll be a gigantic amount of money, So it's basically, again, Japan is very, very strange in the sense that what you say right now in English, it will never get translated through a Japanese media.
Yeah, they would never translate that part, yeah.
No, they'll never. And it's almost like a Japanese MMA media still follows this tradition of pro wrestling media. And the whole industry has to play that role. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. Well, but so they're not functioning as a real media in a way. They should be reporting shit like that,
He also said something crazy. Like, he said, like, he could probably fight Mikuru and not have Mikuru hit him at all. But if they like pay him some money, he'll let him land a couple punches or something.
You know what? Here's what it is. I mean, I hate to say this to those Japanese fans, but you know how Japanese things like, oh, if he fights Mayweather, he'll be world famous instantly, and a lot of people wants to fight Mikuru and blah blah blah. Dude, get real. I mean, how many guy wants to fight Tenshin now after he fought Mayweather on that exhibition fight?
If anything, the Mayweather Tenshin fight ruined Tenshin's international reputation.
Exactly, right.
Because everyone thought the fight was fixed.
Right. The only way that Mikuru will get that kind of a reputation or like a credit in outside Japan is if he beats Mayweather, even though it's exhibition.
I've told my friends this, maybe I've told you this before. Does this remind you of back when Pride was obsessed with Mike Tyson?
Oh yeah, I know, totally. Everybody was obsessed with Mike Tyson or tried to get him into the ring.
At least Mike Tyson, was a knockout artist who was an exciting fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Mayweather seems like a weird fighter to be obsessed with. I don't know why, but it seems weird to me.
It's really weird in a sense that because Mayweather is not as big as Tyson or Ali. Now remember the whole tradition coming from Inoki versus Ali.
Right.
That was the biggest thing ever happened, even in Japanese sports, even to this day in a way, except Ichiro and maybe Shohei Ohtani. You know what I mean? That's how big it was. And so they tried to do that with Tyson. It didn't happen. So they need to find another boxer who's big time in America, who has that name and a record and undefeated, most pay-per-view sold, blah, blah, blah. But the fact is that Mayweather doesn't have that kind of charisma as Ali or Tyson, right?
No, he doesn't have the charisma, and he's not going to do promotional marketing stuff for this. He's just going to show up, take his money, and go home. And
besides, people have to understand, the Mayweather's character in America was the guy loved to hate, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so he was like the guy who's a real good boxer, undefeated. But at the same time, a lot of people want to see him lose.
That's why people bought his pay-per-views to watch him lose, because he was the obnoxious guy talking about how much money he had and all that stuff.
So the way the Japanese media and Japanese audiences are taking Mayweather is completely different, right? And from what's happening in outside Japan. And in that way, for Mayweather, Japan is like a great ATM machine. He ain't making this kind of money on exhibition anywhere else. Nobody's paying him $1.5 million just to come show up at the press conference. He does not have that kind of demand on outside Japan or outside Mr. Sakakibara's mind in a way.
It's crazy to me. So the news is you just lost the Fuji TV deal.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your first thing you do? Blow a bunch of money getting a guy in an attempt to make Fuji TV jealous or something? I don't understand the motivation behind this.
I think genuinely, I think he's really hoping to get back to the table. I really think so. He ain't stupid. I think he understands the power of terrestrial broadcasting has in Japan. I mean, the clear example is this. I know a lot of fighters, a lot of actors, a lot of musicians or talent comedians. They would love to be on terrestrial broadcast, even though they don't get paid. You know what I mean? They have the admiration towards that terrestrial broadcasting. They have a reach to the entire country immediately.
We should tell people that Japan terrestrial broadcasting is like 6 channels.
Exactly.
So if you're on a terrestrial channel in Japan, people are watching.
Right. They're still dominating, majority of TV market. But not only that, the fact is just sponsorship. Just like you see on Super Bowl to World Series here, the sponsorship you can score through this terrestrial broadcasting is not even comparison through YouTube or any other thing, or even streaming service. I'm sorry to tell this, it's not that yet,
See, my issue with it is it reminds me, because when the first time with Pride, where Pride got kicked off Fuji TV, that's when they really got obsessed with getting Mike Tyson to fight Bob Sapp or whatever they're trying to do.
Right, they need some boost.
And I'm just like, are you doing the exact same thing? Are you telling me you haven't thought of anything? Your plan is to get a less famous boxer on TV?
Well, here's what it is. But at the same time, I'm not defending Mr. Sakakibara here, but what else can he do? What else does he have, really?
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was talking to some
came
friends.
Up with the best he can do out of the cards he had on his hand. Really?
Well, I was trying to think, because Sakakibara's strength has always been his ability to get shows on Fuji TV.
Right.
And if you take that ability away from him, he kind of loses a lot of his promotional abilities.
I mean, he's originally from Tokai Television, you know,
Right.
coming in to do the Japanese Sky Perfect TV and stuff like that. So that's that part of the clan he belongs to. In the regular American mind will immediately say, "Oh, let's talk to Abema TV." I mean, half owned by Cyber Asian, half owned by TV Asahi anyway. So can we just talk to TV Asahi then, right? That's what you think. TV Asahi does New Japan Pro Wrestling. You know, they like, you know, MMA. Why not? But I guess it just doesn't work that way in the Japanese business world.
The problem is RIZIN has the stench now. Even though nothing came out of it, they were investigated, and it was found to like be no nefarious things happened.
You know, I'm going to tell you
results don't matter.
Right.
They have the stink.
You know what, Charlie? I'll tell you this about this compliance issue. I would never say this in the Japanese media, but here's what it is. We all know the Japanese entertainment company has some sort of a relationship with mobs. We all know that. Big company, they had some incident like somebody shot their offices where the in the country where there's a strict gun control is. And there's another entertainment company who is long suspected for child molestation. New York Times did a huge article about that company. Still, Japanese television didn't care. They still deal with them. So for the fact they're using the word compliances to try to like get Sakakibara out of there, to me that's just like picking up on the weak guy. You know, it's just obvious.
Excuse. Because the guy that's now, I mean, it's not yet. I think he's getting voted in on the 28th of this month.
Right, exactly, but right. And the
new guy doesn't want
meeting. You know,
he doesn't want MMA or kickboxing on Fuji TV anymore.
And also, you'd be surprised. There's a guy, the bunch of people named called Sokaya in Japan. Those are the guys who actually belongs to mobsters, but who somehow gets hold of a chunk of share of the company, who shows up at the shareholders meeting, start asking a bunch of questions, and cause troubles. It's like another form of extortions they do. And they didn't want any other topic because they can just poke on this topic about Sakakibara on shareholders.
That's the thing that they did back in the 80s, right? They would like take a guy out, get him drunk, take a bunch of like compromising pictures, then show up at a board meeting.
You know, and I'm telling you, I hate the word compliance is the way the Japanese use it, because they just only use it for the conveniences, or it's to pressure people sometimes. Because the fact is, I'm going to tell you this, that I know even the fact that one major label in Japan, that head of president's secretarial room used to belong to the big mobster, because they need somebody like that on label size to be able to deal with the underworld. It's that's just how Japanese business operates. So let's not act fucking innocent, right? I mean, so you're gonna blame on this guy who uses this guy, a troubleshooter, to deal. You kind of have a little friends with the mob star, so you lose big deal, right? I mean, I just don't get that at all, to tell the truth, you know.
I mean, every single combat sports league in Japan, I feel like, is in some way connected with something nefarious.
Oh, entertainment.
Because it's just the nature of the beast, the entertainment industry.
Oh, and the construction companies too, come and face it, right? I mean, we all know that. So, anyway, I want to get to this point. The reason why I kept saying the compliance, the word I don't like, is this. The other day, I was at the Road to UFC in Singapore. I asked Mr. Kenjo Osawa, like, so how come today's young fighters don't have a girlfriend? A lot of people don't date. They don't like to go out and ask for date. And he says, I think they're worried about compliances. I'm like, what? Like, do you worry about compliance when you ask girls out for a date? And then I guess the young guys are concerned about that. So they're like pressured by the word compliance. You know what I mean?
That's weird.
It is weird.
Interesting. That's
weird. It is interesting. And, then, I tell you this. I know this has nothing with MMA. When I used to be in college, I fell in love with this girl who used to work in the front desk of a Marriott hotel. I got a hold of a guy who works in the Marriott hotel. We snuck into the office manager's office, and we went through the Rolodex and found her phone number, and I called her up. And I talked about that. And young fighters look at me and go like, shoot, that's against compliances. You're going to get arrested for that. I'm like, come on, right?
That's weird. Yeah,
that is weird. Anyway, go back to MMA. So it's too bad the Mayweather is basically
Well, I have a question. Did it work the first time? I know that when Mayweather fought Tenshin, it was like probably the highest numbers that Fuji TV did, but it didn't bump it insane amounts. It was just like 2 or 3 points above.
2 or 3 points above, but because of that and everything else, I know for the fact that Sakakibara made a pretty good money. Oh, so actually getting Mayweather to Japan is actually bankable for him. He has some kind of business scheme that works.
So RIZIN makes money off of it.
Exactly.
Right,
Otherwise,
I just want to
they
make sure
wouldn't
that
do
RIZIN wasn't just throwing money away. As long
No.
as they're making money, I don't
They,
care.
I heard that he made money on the last one too. So
Perfect.
I'm pretty sure at least he'll break even or make money,
Well, then-
whatever. But it's not just throwing money.
Then I will endure whatever stupid gimmick Mayweather tries to sell at MMA events for the next 2 years.
Yeah,
'Cause
exactly.
after he left, there was like a bunch of weird Mayweather like gym stuff they were selling.
And you know what? On top of that, I'm telling you this. I have a feeling RIZIN is going to make tons more money than actually Mayweather versus Tenshin because of Mikuru. Mikuru has a big fan base already. You know what I mean?
And they've
Because of
already
his
shown that
name.
they'll pay for pay-per-views.
Yeah, he's a much bigger name to dance with for Mayweather in terms of the Japanese market. So, but the concern is this: what's after this? Really, what's after this? You know?
Yeah.
There's nothing going on. There's no new star, so they're gonna have to make a new star pretty soon.
Yeah,
You know?
they need to make a new star, and because it sounds weird to say, but I feel like the Asakura brothers are almost near the end of the road.
Yeah, exactly. So let's
They're
talk
not near
about
the end of the road like star power wise. They're near the end of the road like being top fighters wise.
Exactly. So let's talk about that RIZIN's next card, which is first is Okinawa.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And talk about, I mean, Mr. Kai Asakura. He's fighting 4-0 Ji Young Yang.
Yep.
What do you think about this matchup?
Well, I like it because I feel like the Asakura brothers both have connections to Road FC.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always nice to see them because they fought in Road FC so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's always nice to see them fight a Road FC guy again. And 4-0, he's foreign. That's what the Japanese fans like to see is their local boys beating up foreign fighters. So I think it's a good matchup for him, especially coming off of the tournament loss.
I know, and it's kind
but
of.
If he loses, that's
it's a big
really,
risk.
really bad.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Really, really bad.
That's what I just wanted to say. But on top of that, it's so funny that I'll tell you this: we have been asking for Naoki to fight Kai. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you this: we were told that all right, that's going to happen in July. So we were like, all right, so that's why we put Naoki back in the fight camp and everything else. And all of a sudden, they're like, maybe not. We want to use Kai for the Okinawa show because it's showing he's the star and blah blah. I get it, right? So do you think we can fight? Kai can fight Inoue? I mean, Inoue can fight Kai? They're like, maybe later, September or December. But September, it's not going to happen because if Naoki will be fighting in another July show, September will be too soon, right? So.
I mean, plus Kai's going to break his hand in this fight, so
that too, exactly. So who knows the injury? It's same for Naoki too. He could be injured too for next fight. So right now, I think all this momentum we had on bantamweight Grand Prix last year is almost gone because nobody's talking about Ogi Kubo, right?
It's all gone because they worked the bantamweight division too hard, and all the fighters needed the first 6 months of the year to recover.
Yeah, and I'm telling you right now, I can tell solely because I'm a manager of Naoki, so I look at the numbers on YouTube's or followers or all kind of numbers, and number die down immediately after New Year's Eve. You know what I mean? Like nobody cares now at this point, So it's too bad. But anyway, so Okinawa has a bunch of cards, and they're going to be another RIZIN on end of July.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, I will let you know that there's going to be a press conference on Friday.
Okay.
They're going to be announcing a bunch of cards for the RIZIN 37. I'm sorry, and I think they're going to have a bunch of fighters at the press conference this time, just like old Pride days or old RIZIN days. I guess the pandemic is over in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is this the one that's going to be in Saitama, I feel like?
Well, here's what it is. This was supposed to be originally July 30th. And this was supposed to be on Fuji Television. And we were told that now it's switched to 31st. Same venue in a Saitama Super Arena. Now, is this on Fuji Television? We don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure RIZIN people know, but we weren't told anything about that yet.
Well, I feel so before the match was canceled, Fuji TV made a comment in response to the article in the magazine that they were going to show the match and they had no plans to show any RIZIN events for the foreseeable future, which makes me think this is not going to be on Fuji TV.
You know what? Here's what it is. I know a lot of young fighters tweet it and says, "Oh, we don't need Fuji anymore. We're okay." Blah 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 blah. I'll tell you this right now. That's a bottom tier fighters we're talking about. for top tier fighters, if it's not on Fuji television, we're going to see a decrease on sponsorship money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
So
stupid. It's stupid to not want to be on terrestrial TV.
exactly. It's stupid to reject it that way. So I really hope Mr. Sakagiba will go back to the table with Fuji, or if it's not, or do something with somewhere. Even TV Tokyo, if he has.
Did I see something that Fuji's TV's stock went down?
Yeah,
like a significant amount when they did this, when they dropped the match.
Well, not only that, but it's been down since the late 90s, I think, almost.
Okay.
And as you can see, they're doing telephone shoppings and rebroadcasting of old TV dramas during the day now, right?
Right, yeah.
So they ain't making any money. They're selling their spots, obviously, to telephone shoppings. That's pretty bad for terrestrial broadcasting.
Yeah, when you're one of 6 channels, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And compared to what NBC, CBS, ABC, or Fox are doing in here, they're so behind on streaming services and all kinds of stuff. Like they should be having like 5 different platforms by now, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's still national television, which has a big government support. So I think it's almost the time they'll turn around and do something.
Well, they got to. And
they have to. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know where this is going to be. Probably not the Fuji television. So it's going to be again, maybe you next, or maybe Abema. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But even Abema would be good if it's on free channel instead of pay-per-view.
Well, Abema's smart. Did you see that they're re-showing Takeru Tenshin tonight on YouTube for free?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it's a smart move, I think, on their part.
I'll tell you this honestly. Obviously that we work very closely with Abema. As a company, we do this, MMA training abroad project, doing shows together and kind of stuff. So I'll tell you this, it's very good for Abema and Fight Sports Channel team, because this number that they have scored on this Tenshin Takeru may end up being like the one of the best number ever on the Japanese sports history on streaming. That's going to give extra budget, extra power to this fight channel, which I'm so happy. That means I can ask for more budget next year,
exactly,
to Japanese fighters to get better, Yeah. So anyway, so I heard we have 4 clients fighting in RIZIN 37, and we all know
the hope was that it's going to be on Fuji TV. That means there's got to be some big fighters on this card, right?
Mm-hmm. I hope so. Yeah. And there's going to be a Grand Prix starting from this show, right? Which we really can't talk so much, but we are going to see some old famous name.
Oh, I'm starting to get flashbacks. Okay, not flashbacks. I'm trying to have ideas float around in my head.
Yes.
Because don't say anything, because I'm uninformed. The only tournament that seems to have any possibility of taking off in my mind is an super atomweight Grand Prix. And so,
here's what it is. I mean, did I ever tell you? Do you have a Netflix?
I do.
Right. Do you have the thriller, the show called You? YOU?
No.
Well, check it out. It's on season 3 now, and there's one of the actors who is a regular on season 3 who is a really good role. She will be coming to RIZIN as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, as a friend of a fighter who will be fighting for RIZIN. So that's a big hint.
Wait a minute. Oh, I heard. Yeah, your first comment let me know who it was, but now I think I know. Yeah, I don't want to say it because I'll end up saying the name.
On top of that, we will see, I think, a couple interesting matchups for this RIZIN 37.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it is the long rumored and set up atomweight Grand Prix, the Okinawa show also has a couple of fights leading into that, so that would make sense.
Right, but I'm actually a little bit puzzled because I think it's going to be 8 fighter Grand Prix, and all opening round will take place on 37. So if you're not on this show, then you're not on Grand Prix. So fighters in this Okinawa show may end up being maybe reserve fight. I don't know.
That's just weird to me because I know. So Asakura Kana openly said in an interview that she was training for the Grand Prix.
Exactly, I heard that.
It was like a mixed, and it was like an interview with her and Taida, I think, because they're part of the same gym network. And she said that she was training for the Grand Prix, so that makes me think Kana Asakura is part of it. So Then there'd be Seika Izawa.
It has to be Izawa, right? I mean, obvious if they do it, you know.
I don't think they'd put Hamasaki in it because I don't think she'd be interested in a tournament. It's interesting. You got to find 2 more Japanese fighters to put in there, or you got to like throw Siwoo Park in there and Rena or something.
I think it's going to be 4 Japanese, 4 non-Japanese.
Yeah.
Usually that way, you know.
I assume the opening round will be 4 Japanese fighters versus 4 foreign fighters. That seems
to
be
it's so funny. I tell you this. I asked the RIZIN, so when you're going to tell me the 7 others, you know, I'm guessing Izawa for sure. So I guess 6 others. So of course they're like, oh, shoot, wait, you know, I'll tell you when we can. But of course I have so many, you know, friends in the business, and I start like chatting with other people, and then I found out 3 more. So, you know.
Well, I mean, it's like the most non-subtly put together tournament. They had Seika Izawa asked them to put together a super atomweight tournament when she won. But it definitely seemed like in the moment one of those things where she's like, I got to remember to say this thing about the super atomweight tournament.
Right. So that's something that was scripted, right? I think.
Yeah. I got to remember they told me to say this thing if I won. And then Kana Asakura brought it up in an interview. And so, yeah, there you go.
Right. So it's happening. And I think just to let the fans know that we knew about this show. And in terms of my clients, we knew all the fights and opponents even a month before already. So, So it's not like a last minute thing for us at all. It's just not announcing it to the fans. That's all.
My question, I don't know if you know. Rena's too big for super atomweight now, isn't she?
I think so, right? Because I'm not hearing her name at all.
Because I know she had that hospitalized weight cut, so then she was doing like 50 and 51 kilo.
And besides, maybe Grand Prix is not her choice, right? At this point, she's probably looking for maybe 1 or 2 money fights to walk out of the game, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I got an idea. Okay, here's my prediction. I'm gonna make a wild prediction for the Japanese fighters. I'm gonna go Seika Izawa, Kana Asakura. Since Saudi Oshima she's on the Okinawa show, and so is Miyamoto.
So she's out. I don't think she's in.
I think they're gonna put Miki Matono in as Ayaka Hamasaki Jr.
Charlie, I'm so sorry I got to tell you this. That's not gonna happen too. Damn it. Yeah, Miki has another plan.
There's so many atomweights. I mean, it's a good problem to have. The atomweight division is completely stacked. The atomweight division is completely stacked. I will say, I have a prediction. I think that Siwoo Park will be part of the tournament.
I think so too.
Because she beat Rena,
right?
And because she's essentially like, they can just say like, "This is Ham Sohee" and push her out to the cage.
Right, and besides, and she kind of almost half lives in Japan, right, with a boyfriend, and
she lives here. I don't think she's been home for a long time.
Right, but I think, you know, for her, she may even have to go back and get a new visa or something.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
well, I know that she was. I think she was an employee of Deep, and that's how she was staying in Japan.
Oh, okay. So maybe she has a visa. Huh?
Because I know Deep signed her to a long-term contract. I think that's part of the thing. Because it was one of those things they like brought her in just as the pandemic was happening, and they were like, let's slap a visa on her so that we can put a non-Japanese flag on a bunch of events.
But you know, that's actually kind of smart though, because it's super smart. It's not like she's getting fights in Korea anyway.
No, it's super smart.
Right.
Now the problem is, I don't think they would use her as a Japanese fighter. I think they'd use her as one of the foreign fighters.
Yes, right. Probably they would have to, right?
But there's, oh my god.
No, but because you know the reason why I know there's one Korean is this, because one of our client who's in the Grand Prix has to go get a visa. Then right now it takes really long time than usual, so we're being pushed to turning all the documents as fast as possible. In the course of this conversation, we heard that we shouldn't do the same with the Korean fighters, and they're slow and may not make it, so we're getting nervous. So obviously there's one Korean in there, right? So
I mean, that could be that dude that Kai's fighting. Maybe the Kai guy doesn't have his visa worked out yet.
True. That is very true. You're right. I forgot about that. So that may not be about the Grand Prix. Who knows? But it's really like that, just to let the fans know. It's not like we know everything. And sometimes we ask, but we don't know. So I kind of ask around.
Now you have me stuck because the atomweights I would have put in this are fighting on the event before it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I'm really wondering about that. Like, who is another Japanese? Maybe they would have to put Hamasaki in there. Who knows?
I mean, is the day finally going to happen? Is Shuto Watanabe's girlfriend getting the call up to the big stage?
What's her name? Hikaru Aono? Yes.
I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But
is she even getting any calls? I mean,
No, she's coming off a loss. She got beat by Moetti Suda, who's fighting in Okinawa.
That's right. Yeah.
But the atomweight division, part of me now thinks that if some of the girls win in Okinawa, maybe they do a quick turnaround. I don't see
right.
I don't see how you don't put Saudi Oshima in the tournament. Is what
I thought so too. The Saudi is great.
Yeah.
Oh, but I didn't hear about Saudi's problem. Right.
No, I think we talked about her husband
not
being able to. Yeah.
Right. They may have but who knows? I mean, if she wins without an injury, she could have a quick turnaround.
Oh, first. I'm being so stupid. I am limiting my scope of Japanese fighters to Rising and Deep.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible? Is Karen Pravzura
you know what?
from Team Date?
Yeah, exactly. I thank you very much. You mentioned that. Yeah, I know. I'd love to see them. Yeah.
I need that. I need Team Pravzura to be part of this tournament.
Pravzura, that's how you pronounce it. I always wonder, but yeah.
If Karen Date is part of this as the Pancrase champion, it'll be the greatest tournament of all time.
Right. Or don't you love if they do Road to UFC again next year? If they do girl division, I mean, I'd love to see Team Pravzura girl. They'll go there.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I'd be all about it. Hey,
yeah.
I joke about them all the time. That Durrani dude sidekicked the guy's jaw off his face in his last fight. So, and she beat Emi Fujino. I mean, that's no easy beat. It's no easy win.
No, it's not. So, I mean, why not, right? I mean, in terms of road to UFC, it could happen, right?
Yeah. So now I'm thinking, oh my god.
Here's
the wild card, Shu. Here's the wild card. Does Rin Nakai drop down to super atom weight?
I don't think she can make it. In terms of her height, if she has maybe ear, she would. But by the way, is any news about Rin Nakai? Is she signing with any management? I mean, she's been pretty quiet on Twitter these days.
So my theory about the management, I have no evidence to back this up, is that in order to work with Deep Jewels almost required her to have a manager.
Almost. Maybe not, you know.
And that the second she finished the Deep Jewels tournament, she just fired the manager and everybody. And I don't get it because she's very respectful to Deep Jewels, but it seems almost disrespectful to win the championship and then it's be like, I'm free. Like, I'm no longer part of your organization. So it just seems very strange to me.
Actually, this is what I think. You know, the old management that she had was the same management who used to do Horiguchi and who does Kan Asakura and stuff. Yeah. It's not like they're necessarily so close with Deep. I think they thought that they could do a business with Rin Nakai. So they signed her up and they communicated with Deep and got everything done. But they realized, I think it's kind of difficult to do with Rin Nakai and her coach. So that's why have to fall out, I think.
Simply. I got mixed signals because from everything I witnessed at the event and from her Twitter, Rin Nakai and Wild Usami have said nothing but the nicest things about Deep recently.
Right.
I mean, Deep flew her to Tokyo. She stayed in a very nice hotel. They gave her the star treatment. She seemed very grateful to that. And in the post-fight event, Sayaki even said, look, if you want to go fight in the UFC or for some big promotion, we're not going to stop you. In the meantime, we'll bring in foreign fighters for you to beat up to help build your resume. I don't know why she just doesn't do that. Now, I know that she went into the tournament injured in the last fight. And I think she might be doing some recovery stuff. I know she posted some pictures of her at like a clinic or something. But
But here's the question, though. I don't know why she makes comments like that on Twitter, because when you get rid of management, that's fine. But if you write it like that, because you're almost like kind of hurting the management too. So I wouldn't want to deal with a fighter who would do that to me anyway. You know, so that's like a negative thing for a fighter to do. And I don't think he understands. I'll tell you, it's he, because he writes those. You know, it's not she.
I've never heard a Japanese fighter ever mention their management.
Exactly, right. Almost, except our clients, they do sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
It's very rare.
I mean, in general, you never hear them speak about their management to the point where I've been told, like, oh, they have a manager. And I'm like, oh, well, they've never told me they have a manager.
Right. But really, the weird thing is almost 90% of Japanese has the management.
Yeah.
Some kind of manager or management or coach/manager.
Well, usually the coach is like the manager, unless they're like a big shot.
Right.
Now, what's weird is the management company that Ren Nakai was with is also the manager for, as you said, Kana Asakura, who by all accounts is doing very well. You'd think you'd want to stay with a management company that's running her career well, but
Exactly. But you know what the problem about some of the Japanese fighters is this. They think some management doesn't have ability to talk to UFC, which is not true. Every management can send email to Sean Shelby or Mick Maynard. It's not that hard. But for some reason, Japanese fighter has this. There's a word called ruto, means it's route.
yeah.
Like if you don't have that route, you can't get things done. People think that way, but that's not true. You know what I mean?
I had to laugh because I emailed the Bellator matchmaker about something. He responded like in 15 minutes.
Right.
So
most of the matchmakers, the good ones, they respond. And when the answer is no answer is pretty fast.
Yeah.
It's not going to take weeks. You're talking about maybe 10 minutes if it's no. Interested maybe, in that kind of conversation takes a while, but still. So I just don't see what is the point. I don't know. The problem is that her coach / husband just doesn't understand the business side of the MMA, and that's what's hurting her career. And
waiting for the UFC is never going to work out.
No.
If I was them, I'd be focused more on Bellator.
I don't know why she's not in Bellator. I mean, she's dying to be Kana Watanabe, right?
That's the entire angle I would take. I would build up. I would do a whole marketing campaign about how you deserve to beat Kana Watanabe and get Bellator interested.
Right. And I hate to say this. I'm sorry to Mr. Coker. The women's flyweight for Bellator is pretty thin.
Well, it's hilarious because the top 4 of the division are like a completely different division than the rest of the division.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so if that's the division, she could go in there and maybe even storm through to the title fight. So and with the way she fights, she may even have a chance against Liz Camouche. Who knows, right? So,
especially like
the
fact that Liz Camouche is the champion.
Career. I feel so bad for her in a way.
I still say that she's the most mismanaged fighter I've ever seen
in history of the sports. I think almost somebody should write a book or even do a movie about that. Again,
worse managed than Joe Louis. No, that might be pulling you a little.
Yeah. Well, here you go, Charlie. There's another angle for your documentary. There's so much documentary subject there. Here you go. How big of a star could Izawa be if she gets a big push and wins tournament? Will this finally give atomweight the momentum?
I would say
maybe she could get herself into road to UFC against the foreigner.
I think that last comment's about Ren Nakai. But about Izawa, I think unfortunately Izawa kind of has to take the Ayaka Hamasaki route.
Yeah, I think so.
She doesn't seem to be like overflowing with charisma. Like if that's the polite way of saying that. So she's gonna have to get a bunch of wins and then be like the dominant champion approach to her market.
And actually, if she wants to go UFC, she's got to do 115.
Yeah.
Eventually, it has to go up. And it can't be just playing around. But it's not a bad idea to do that for next year or two, so she can make good money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a professional career. You know what I mean? It's not amateur career here.
Plus, RIZIN will bring over stiffer talent for her to fight, so she can improve too as well.
Right. And the last comment about the Ren Nakai road to UFC. I tell you, when road to UFC concept was announced, it was supposed to be less than 10 fights, 30 years old or younger. But when you really look at the road to UFC fighters, it didn't turn out to be that way, right? Because it was obviously there was a lack of talent. It was like 37 years old with 20 fights under their belt. So if they do 125 women or 115 women, sure, I think there's a possibility. I think, right?
Well, I mean, road to UFC, like a bunch of the fighters are coming off of losses from Japan, so yeah,
exactly right.
It was the strictest comment.
Right. So anything could happen,
Wouldn't the UFC want Ren Nakai if she reached out to them? I would say the answer is no.
No.
They would be interested in her if she was more active, I would think. Exactly.
And plus, they didn't have a good experience dealing with her the last time when she was under the UFC. It took them a long time to get her to take the second fight, And between the first and second fight, they even had a boss to ask for some extra money so she can make a living or train. So they don't understand how MMA sports business works, unfortunately. Back then, I hope they understand now, but unfortunately.
No. Yeah. I mean, there's no way, because she's fought. It's true, she's fought 3 times this year, but she didn't fight 2 years before that. And
that's why I think she should be going to Bellator, try to be a Bellator champion. If you defend like 3, 5, 6 times, who knows? Her championship clause could be over. Then if she's still champion by then just like a Ben Askren, that finally maybe US will be convinced to take her back.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah, who knows? But I mean, I wish she talks to the management in that kind of manner. She should have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. If it doesn't work, we do this, that type of stuff, and set up a medium goal, long-term goal, short-term goal. I don't know why
I would meet with it. If I was her, I would meet with management. I would say, Bellator is coming to Japan in December. What do I have to do to get on that show?
Exactly. I would be talking to Mike Colgan or Scott Coker right now about that.
Do you need me? Do you need me to fight and win some fights? Do you need me to do something like?
I mean, I would ask for Kana Watanabe fight there. Then who knows? That might create something in Japan.
Yeah.
Maybe I would tell for the Bellator.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's my entire if my vision board, so to speak, would be like, I am fighting on Bellator Japan.
Charlie,
I'm making this happen.
I think this is what you should do. You should reach out to Rindaka. You should volunteer yourself to be their manager. I think you should document, and we should follow the documentary about that.
Next time you see me, I've ripped all of my hair out and I'm just crying on the ground.
Well, I'm telling you, it's going to be very interesting to do it. I think you should.
If you were their management, it'd be like one of those things where you would say something, you just assume that people accept, and they would say no, and you'd be like, "Oh, I've never had someone say no to this before." I honestly feel like they need someone to hold their hand and walk them through everything.
Oh, of course, right? That's what they need. Yeah, but the problem is that her husband is not allowing her to do that.
Yeah.
He has to come along and tag along and everything, but it doesn't work that way anymore.
I will say, based off my recent interactions with them, she does kind of if she wants to do something and he doesn't want to do it, she does it anyway.
Well, then so I think leave.
No, I think it's kind of interesting to watch. When they were interviewing her in the post-fight press conference, he would kind of not want to answer a question, and she would tell him to shut up and answer it anyway. So maybe she is finally starting to reach out of her own shell a little bit.
I'm so happy for her if that's the case. Yeah, because that's what she needs to do.
Yeah.
And I hate to say this, but from what I see on the Twitter responses and some diehard fans, instead of asking for free rices and free meat and stuff like that, if they really sit down with the big sponsor, talk about going to States, even get an O1 visa, get an apartment kind of stuff, I think they can do it $30 grand. With the big sponsor like that, they should be able to make that happen too. I'm talking about 30,000.
We're at the point of the MMA scene now where there are low-level fighters that are getting pretty good sponsors. She should be not begging for food. She should have enough money.
Right. I mean, in Japan, exactly, you said that some low-level fighters gets pretty good business sponsors, even though it's $500 each, some gets 20, kind of stuff, So, I mean, she should be asking for money, not money in a sense that cash. Maybe one company asks for round-trip ticket, one company asks for to cover the rent, one company asks to rent her a car, whatever that is, So you got to do those business plans and approach those sponsors. I think in her popularity, it's possible.
That's what I'm getting at. Because if fighters like Saudi Oshima and Miki Matano have a bunch of sponsors, Rin Nakai should have. I mean, this is no offense to them. I think they're amazing fighters. But Rin Nakai has been around for close to 20 years now.
Right.
She should have 10 times the sponsorships they have.
Right. But the bottom line is this, though. I always tell this to my clients too, but bigger you get, the number of sponsorships will be lower because you're going to be dealing with the big paying sponsors. You're not going to have a big paying, or exclusive deals and stuff like that. So if you have 30 sponsors on your shorts, actually it's a sign of mediocre talent. If you're top,
I feel like you're making fun of half the fighters at the match.
Yeah,
kickboxers have 50 sponsors on their shorts.
Right, but it's true though, right? Yeah. If you're bigger the fighter, you get exclusive deals. I mean, you get one Nike on the butt panel. That's it. I'm telling you,
nothing's more impressive than back when Rena was fighting and all she had on was a Nike logo. You're like,
she's getting paid. Right. Or TikTok. That's it kind of stuff, right? I mean, that's what the big sponsors. That's what the sponsorship for the top fighters. It's not about how many bunch of the sponsors you got.
Yeah.
Right. But again,
Kind of
so
like what Itsuki would be the most recent example, just Monster.
Monster, exactly. And Monster will not give you a big money if it's not an exclusive spot or exclusive energy drink spot, whatever
Yeah.
that is, right? So, I mean, people have to understand that. So, the Rin Nakai, with that kind of followership and kind of fan base, she should be able to find a sponsor that will finance her to get a visa and move to States and set up her a place to live and car to drive in or whoever, that kind of stuff.
She, to me, would be the one because Japan's kind of behind the times on a lot of stuff with the internet, especially.
Mm-hmm.
She's the one fighter that could have like some form of online fan club, like be it
That's
Patreon
exactly.
or anything like that, to pay for her training expenses.
And she would make her own NFTs too.
She would make
it will sell.
Because I know a girl, there's Sylvie Ivanita, who like lives in Thailand, and everything is paid by people on her Patreon page. Rin Nakai would make thousands of dollars a month to train in the US if she wanted to. Like if she just made a Patreon or something like that.
Exactly. So I wish she realizes that, because her time is really running out.
Strangely, the one fighter that seems to understand that is Kana Watanabe, who's like made her own fan club where she makes like exclusive videos and stuff for those people to help pay for her to go abroad and stuff, and pay for her coach to not work for a week.
but how come she's still working there? She should be in different team, working under the different coach by now.
No? Who, Kana Watanabe?
Right.
I mean, it might be to do with when your boyfriend's your coach. I don't know. That might be.
See, that's one thing I understand. It's such a, as a man, if I have a girlfriend who I believe she can be better if it's under a better coach or different coach, I'll push her to go there. Why would I ask her to be with me, and if I can't deliver it?
Would the classic examples be that Megumi Fuji didn't train with her boyfriend, and Shizuka Sugiyama doesn't train with her husband?
Exactly. So as majority of female fighters here, it's not like they train with their girlfriends or boyfriends.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I would think it'd be weird. It'd be weird to train. You gotta keep that stuff separate, unless your name's Pat Barry and Rose Namajunas.
And besides, how would you feel? You go to train and the coach is there, and you go home, the coach is there too. Come on.
Yeah, it drive me insane.
Right.
I also think that always ends up poorly.
It is. They did it. So I mean,
it's like not the same level, but it reminds me of all of the. I mean, you can count on your hand how many times the father-coach situation has worked out. Like Tenshin's one of the ones where it's worked, Tiger Woods, but like 100 other times, it always ends up being the dad that doesn't know what he's doing, like hitting their son or daughter in the corner.
I think it's only just you two just mentioned, and plus maybe Ichiro. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I can't think of anybody else. And you're talking about that's 3 out of tens of millions.
Any other time I see a fighter who's cornered by their dad, I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. This is going to be real bad.
Right, I know. So yeah, I'm telling
all the others are like Buster Douglas. Got some.
The only one time in Korea I was interested in managing Rin Nakai when she was fighting Wendy Tomomi at 115, and that was you're talking about like 15 years ago. I mean, God,
yeah,
I feel so sorry for her. Yeah, I don't know what she has been doing, But anyway, so let's wrap this up because I gotta go, and I guess we always have to wrap it up with the Rin Nakai, huh?
Everything always comes back. I mean, we got to hit Team Pravzura, and we got to get around to Rin Nakai at some point.
I love to see her. I'm telling you, I want to see her in Road to UFC next year.
Yeah. Well, when she's the rising champion, she'll have some good negotiating power.
Does she have management? Maybe I should reach out to them.
I reached out to them. I think they manage themselves because it's just their own email. They seem to respond themselves.
All right. And also, I think you should think about reach out to Rin Nakai to be a manager.
I'm afraid that I'd be buried in somewhere in Shikoku and they'd never find my body.
That'd be fun. Okay. All right. So I guess we talk again in 2 weeks.
Yep. Sounds perfect.
All right. I'll see you later.
See ya.
Okay. Bye-bye.